I'm Suzanne Sibylla. I'm the owner of Sibylla and Associates, which is the premier leadership and employee development company.
Overcome obstacles, reframe your reality, love life, and have growth goals. Change and shift your energy. Pivot.
Welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm Suzanne Sibylla, your host of Pivot Now, where we bring on interesting, exciting, and dynamic guests who will share with us their tips, tricks, and life and business hacks. Today, I am super excited to have this guest on our show. We have such incredible guests on our show, let me tell you. And she is so amazing. So she is, let me tell you a little bit more about her. She is a certified life and success coach and the founder and owner of Socially Aligned. She helps ambitious professionals to reduce their level of stress so they don't burn out or burn it all down. I think we all need that. I know I need that for sure. So welcome to our show, Julie Lowe. Woo! Bring it on, Julie. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Oh, thank you.
Love it.
What a great introduction.
Let's go, Julie. Woo! Welcome.
Thank you.
So glad to have you on our show. So we want to know more about your backstory and how you have pivoted in your life or business.
Yeah, awesome. So, the beginning of my career, it was, I would say less pivots, more of like a natural transition or progression of, I actually started out as a graphic designer that evolved into online marketing and online advertising, and then eventually into social media marketing. I came out of school early enough that Facebook wasn't a thing. Social media wasn't really a thing. So my career kind of evolved naturally until my first really big pivot was when I went into business for myself. I worked in a corporate career for about 13 years post graduation. And then what happened was I actually went to an event for social media marketing to really advance my skills for my job. But what happened was I actually fell in love with entrepreneurs. I met all these amazing entrepreneurs that were trying to learn social media to grow their businesses. It wasn't really their forte necessarily, but I just had such a deep love and respect for entrepreneurs. And I was like, I want to help more of them. I don't want to just help one business. I want to help more of them. And that's really what drove me forward. And so that was a huge pivot. I had never seen myself as an entrepreneur. I've called myself an accidental entrepreneur before because I kind of fell into it, right? I kind of fell into it because of that desire to help more people. And after about a year of doing that business on the side, I took the leap. I quit my 9-to-5 job and I went full time into entrepreneurship, really not knowing am I cut out for this? Do I really know what I'm doing? Can I really, make money? I had small children. My kids were pretty young at the time, and it was scary. And that was a huge, huge pivot, leaving my corporate career behind and going full time as an entrepreneur. So I'd say that was my first pivot.
So how did you overcome? I imagine you had a number of obstacles or challenges that you had to overcome. How did you overcome those obstacles and challenges?
Yeah, when I think back, I can kind of boil it down to 3 things that really helped me overcome those obstacles. And I would say the number one thing was what I just said is I was really passionate about it. It was this meaningful pursuit to me. And it meant a lot to me that I do well, not just for me, but for my clients and for the people I wanted to serve. So having that big why, that big reason for going forward and trying to make it work, that was huge. Having that clarity, having that passion behind it. And then the other 2 things that were really pivotal for me were having coaches and mentors and having a supportive community. I absolutely don't think I could have made the transition or lasted. Now I've been in business for over 10 years. I don't think I would have come so far and been so successful if it wasn't for coaches and mentors and community. When I started, like I said, I had such a respect for these entrepreneurs, but in my day-to-day life, I didn't know any entrepreneurs. And so it was like really intimidating because I was like, I don't know what's involved with running a business. I don't know what I don't know.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So I
Yeah.
invested really quickly in getting help. Because I feel like whenever you're doing something like growing a business, it's not like you're the first person to ever grow a business, right? There's people
Mhm.
out there that have done it. So I think it's so important to find those mentors, to find those coaches that have gone before you that can speed up your success. So having really great coaches and mentors was super helpful. And then surrounding myself with other entrepreneurs and community was so key. Because like I said, my family, as supportive as they were, they didn't get it, right? The
Uh-huh.
same way that an entrepreneur gets it. I think until you are an entrepreneur and you've lived it, it's hard to really get the struggle sometimes. So really surrounding myself with that community that got it, that had my back, that gave me advice and cheered me on was so key. And I've also met some of my greatest friends in the entrepreneur community, but they've really helped me keep going through the hard times.
I think that is so right on what you're saying. I mean, to have your reason why, because a lot of times people are interested in being an entrepreneur, but they don't really know their reason why they want to do it,
Yeah.
or they're thinking, oh, I want to get away from that corporate grind, if you will. And so I'll go into being an entrepreneur. That looks like that'll be a great thing to do. And then they haven't really researched it out. They haven't really seen what the reason why they were going to do it. And I think the other part of it is community. Community is so important. Like you're stating, to have mentors that have done the kinds of things that you want to do so that you can fast track it. So you don't have to go the slow method, so to speak, or like go through all those different challenges and obstacles because someone else has gone through that before you. And you can actually find out more about that being mentored by someone that's gone before you. So I think those are excellent tips and ideas as well. Fantastic. So can you tell us a little bit more about, because we talked about overcoming obstacles and your challenges and pivoting. A lot of times we also talk about what's called our 3-2-1. So can you give us 3 tips? I know you've already talked about some of the tips. Can you give us 3 tips, 2 techniques, and 1 action item that we can take to move ourselves forward? I know you talk a lot about stress and reducing that level of stress. So can you give us those 3 tips, 2 techniques, and 1 action item?
Yes, absolutely. So really my, kind of topic today is around how to use stress to your advantage. And the reason why
Mm,
I've gotten so into stress reduction and nervous system regulation in my business is because that was my second big pivot, was really learning how to get this under control. And I have been pivoting in my business in the past year and adding, in addition to my advertising business, I'm now a life and success coach. And the reason I made that pivot is because I have struggled with stress and anxiety my whole life. And while I've been really successful in my business, it's been with a lot of struggle and been with a lot of
mm,
anxiety, frankly.
mhm.
And so in 2020, pandemic hit like everybody. This is tough times. And I've been anxious most of my life, but my anxiety really kind of came to a peak during that time. And I was like, there's got to be something. I felt like at that point, I felt like I'd tried everything, but I was like, there's something missing. And that's when I really kind of dove into the coaching world and learned the techniques that I want to share with you today. And they changed my life. And that's why I've made this pivot and really added, life and success coaching to my business, because they are the things that have helped me through big pivots in my life when I look at it and really make a difference. So my first tip is to really learn how to manage your stress and get out of stress debt. You've probably heard of sleep debt, this concept
Mhm.
that, you keep having bad nights of sleep, you sleep 4 hours a night for a while, it builds up. And then you have this sleep debt you have to chip away at. Stress works the same way. If you endure a lot of stress over time, it builds up. Like your body keeps the score. It remembers, it holds on to it, and it really
Mm.
starts piling up. So the thing that really kind of changed my life 2 years ago is when I learned that stress, anxiety, they live in the body first. I used to always think that stress was a mindset thing, right? Like I just need to think better thoughts. I need to not be so sensitive. I need to not worry all the time or whatever.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And so I just thought it was a mindset problem. So when I learned that stress begins as a nervous system response and your body is sending you into fight or flight, number one, it took away a lot of the honestly like shame I had around
Mm.
my anxiety, because I always thought it's just something wrong with me. If I had a stronger, mindset around this, I could change it. And I never
Mhm.
could change it. And then when I learned that, oh, actually there's such a huge physical component to stress, that really helped me, number one, take away some of the shame. And number two, bring in new tactics to reduce my stress. Because when I was just using it as a mental game, just wasn't happening. So when you're pivoting and you're stressed, because it can be a very stressful situation, you really
Mhm.
start working at chipping away at that stress debt. And you can do that with nervous system regulation techniques. If you Google it, there's a million different little hacks and things you can do out there. But I'd say the top two things you can do for nervous system regulation is get a good night's sleep and exercise and move your body every day.
Mm.
The reason being, there's a lot of research behind the fact that poor sleep habits and having sleep debt really adds to your stress. Number one, cognitively, you're just not as clear, you're not as sharp, if you
Yep.
have stress, a lot of sleep debt, but it also adds to your stress levels. Your cortisol levels go up and it really adds to your stress. So if you want to reduce your stress, get a good night's sleep. Again, Google it. There's a million tips on how to clean up your sleep, but that is really key and people take that for granted. And then the second one, moving your body, getting some exercise every day. And the reason that's so important is because stress lives in your body. Think about it. When you're stressed, you tend to be like all tensed up, like physically
Yep.
tense. Number one,
Yep.
you're holding a lot of that tension in your body. And number two, when you think about it, when you get stressed and your body sends you into fight or flight, you're revved up. You're in this like heightened state where you're ready to fight or to run for,
Uh-huh.
but that's not usually the best response. It's not the proper response, but your body is revved up for that. So you need to have some outlet to relieve your stress. And physical activity is the number one way that you can do that. So that's the first tip, is use nervous system regulation techniques to chip away at that stress debt. Now, number two is to really kind of shift your perspective on stress and to really come to believe that you can use stress to your advantage. So when I learned about
Mm.
nervous system regulation techniques, changed my life. I was so much more capable of reducing my stress levels whenever I started regulating my nervous system. But then what I was doing was I wasn't always using the appropriate tool. I'd be trying to calm myself down all the time in stressful situations. So the second thing that really kind of changed my life was learning that there is an upside to stress. Stress is
Mm.
not all
Mhm.
bad. We don't have to make stress the enemy, and we can use it to our advantage. And what I mean by that is if we have as a goal, I'm not going to have any stress, no more stress
Yeah.
in my life, I want to eliminate it totally. It's actually not a very good goal, because
Right.
if you are
Right.
living a meaningful life, if you
Mhm.
are up to big things, you're gonna have stress. If you're a human being and you're doing something other than just sitting on your couch and watching Netflix, you're gonna have stress.
Mhm.
If somebody's watching this show, if they're interested in pivots, they're probably up to big things and they're going to have some stress. So the goal isn't necessarily to totally eliminate stress from your life, but to learn how to regulate your nervous system. And then in those situations that are positive stress situations, like an interview or speaking on stage or whatever it may be for you that stresses you out, those are not necessarily bad situations, but you might have a little anxiety, come up. And so
Mhm.
rather than fighting the stress and trying to calm yourself down completely, if you can actually learn how to channel that stress and that energy that it's giving you, remember it's revving you up a little bit. If you can actually properly channel it to show up with more energy and to tell yourself, you know what? Yeah, I'm feeling a little stressed because this is a big moment for me, but I'm going to take that energy and know that my body is getting me ready for this. It's getting me ready for the challenge and giving me the energy and the focus that I need to really perform well under pressure. You can actually use stress to your advantage in that way.
I love that. I definitely love that. I mean, because a lot of times, we think of like fear or anxiety as like, oh my gosh, I want to hide from it or I want to run away from it. And instead, you're talking about like really leaning into it and using that to fuel your energy. So I love what you're talking about. I also like what you talked about in terms of getting enough sleep. I think sleep deprivation is such a big issue in our world, in our society, in our culture, because a lot of times we're working so much, we're very busy, and we lead very busy lives, and we don't get enough sleep. I know for myself, when I don't get enough sleep, like last night, it's hard to communicate, right? It's hard to
It is.
talk. It's hard to think straight, So it is really important to have really a good night's sleep. And then I love what you said about physical activity. Get out there, do some exercise. You can do it in your house. I mean, but just get some exercise, right? Move your body around, because that'll alleviate a lot of stress as well. So can you help us with regards to the sleep? I mean, how can we get enough sleep? For example, like I didn't get enough sleep last night. I don't know. I woke up, it was like 3 a.m. I'm like tossing and turning, trying to get back to sleep. So what would you do to help me?
Yeah. I think a couple of things is a lot of times we know the things that we should do to sleep better that would prepare us to sleep better, but we don't do it. And I think sometimes it's finding that motivation and your thing that's going to motivate you enough to do the things that you need to do. So a few really basic things around sleep that we should all be doing is, number one, no technology for an hour or two before bed. Turn off those screens. Don't be staring at your phone. Don't be staring at your TV because of the blue light. Most of us know that. The other thing with social media, especially, sometimes something might upset you. There might be something in the news that's going to upset you before bed. So really kind of checking off of everything an hour or two before bed, at least an hour, can be really helpful. Number two, getting the room fairly cool, about 68 degrees, they say, is actually an ideal sleep temperature, which might sound a little cold to some people, but you actually sleep better in a cold room. So lowering that temperature, and then really kind of having a routine, if at all possible, lowering the lights, maybe reading a book, as long as it's not anything too exciting.
Right, exactly.
Really get your brain going before bed. Those all help. The other thing is, when if you're actually struggling to sleep because you're anxious about something, I went through a period of time where I was highly anxious. I was having a lot of panic attacks, and a lot of times I'd have them right before bed, which you would think, well, that's weird. Like, the day is done, like you finished everything. Why then? But I think for some of us, if you struggle with anxiety, especially, you kind of hold it together possibly during the day, but it kind of builds up. And if you don't do something to relieve your stress before bed, it can really impact your sleep. So EFT tapping is a wonderful way, especially if it's anxiety that's bothering you, to relieve stress and kind of work through some things and energetically release them before bed. It's a little bit of like talk therapy mixed with, physically tapping on your body. It's a really good way to work through things. If you're not into that, you can also just journal or just brain dump things before bed so that you're not waking up in the middle of the night like, oh yeah, got to do that thing tomorrow. Oh yeah, I need to buy it. Right?
Yeah.
You just do a brain dump. That can be really helpful too. And then if you're waking up in the middle of the night, I would say resist the urge to check your phone or to really start doing things. If you absolutely, can't lay there and get yourself back to sleep, get up and read or do something calming for a little bit if you're really tossing and turning. But I try personally just to take some deep breaths and really relax myself and progressively relax my body. And usually that can help me get back to sleep.
Yeah, excellent tips. Definitely excellent tips. And tell us a little bit more about EFT, because I've heard so much about EFT. Tell us a little bit more about what that is. How do you actually use that technique? And explain it to us.
Yeah. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And it's one of those things that honestly, when I first heard about it, I was like, I don't know about that. It sounds a little bit out there and you wonder like, okay, is there anything behind this? But it's really interesting. It has been really heavily scientifically studied. And there's a ton of research that backs it up. There's even some studies that have found that EFT can be more effective than talk therapy at reducing anxiety and depression. So it's definitely one of those things, if you're skeptical, look more into it because there's so much science to back it up. Like I said, it's a little bit of a combination of almost like talk therapy that you take yourself through, which is, I think, one of the big benefits of EFT is you don't have to have somebody else to do it with you. You can do it yourself. But it involves kind of talking yourself through what you're struggling with. And then also kind of doing a round where you're talking yourself through positive outcomes, focusing on the good outcome that you want. And while you're doing it, you're actually tapping on some different points of your body. So you tap on the side of your hand, and then it's mostly on your face. So like the corner of your brow, the side of your eye, under your nose, and then here on this little divot in your chin, and then by your collarbones. And you can actually kind of slap under your arm and then the top of your head. But you're just kind of walking yourself through and tapping. And there's actually some science behind the pressure. It's almost like acupressure or acupuncture points on your body. Found that if you tap on these, the science says that it's almost like it bypasses the part of your brain that's stuck in fear and speaks more to your subconscious mind. So you can kind of short circuit those thoughts that you're struggling with. So it can be really helpful. There's a ton of videos on YouTube. Brad Yates is probably my favorite EFT guy that has a lot of scripts you can walk through. Or you can even just tap and like tell yourself that you're okay. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm okay. And just tap. And it's amazing. Like it can stop a panic attack like that. It was very, very helpful to me when I was having panic attacks. Yeah.
So, and it's a certain routine. I mean, you need to do it like a certain routine, doing it like on the side, and then
so you might start a setup statement where you would say like, even though I'm stressed and anxious, I deeply love myself. Even though I'm stressed and anxious, I love myself. And you do that 3 times on the they call it the karate chop point of your hand. You do that, and then you just go through on each point, and you tap about 7 or 8 times, and you would say something like, "I am safe. I am safe. I am safe," and then you can move on to everything's going to be okay. Even though I'm stressed, this is going to work out, and you just keep progressively tapping. Traditionally speaking, you would go through and you would say all the negative thoughts. You can almost like just everything that's on your head, those negative repetitive thoughts. And it really kind of brings those to the forefront. Now, if you're having a panic attack, you don't need to bring it up anymore. So I'd maybe skip the negative and just go straight to the positive statements of I'm safe, I'm protected, I'm okay, everything's going to be, I can breathe, just like kind of calming yourself down as you tap through them. And by the time you go around, and you can do as many rotations as you need, it's amazing how much more grounded in your body you can become. And, panic attacks especially can be so scary because it's hard, it can be hard to breathe and you feel kind of out of control, but it can be really helpful to really recenter you in your body. So you can do it in an extreme situation like a panic attack. A lot of people do it just if they're worried about something, they need to clear their mind around something, they want to really bring up those negative or positive thoughts and eliminate the negative ones, can be really helpful for that too.
Wow, I love that. That sounds really great. I'm going to look more into that because I know I've heard so much about it, and so it's really great to hear that it's a really good technique to use.
It is,
so thank you for that. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Also, I'm wondering too, can you give us more in terms of what actions can we take right now to move us forward in our life?
So I think one really easy way to kind of integrate a few of the things that I've talked about today, because like I said, sometimes we know some of the things that we should be doing, like better sleep, getting exercise, getting a handle on our day. We know it, but sometimes common sense isn't common practice, right?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
so I love to really kind of think about like some high performance habits that you can have that are really simple and really help you stay focused and regulated during the day. One of my favorite ways to do this is time blocking with a little specific purpose. I've tried time blocking in other ways before. It didn't necessarily work for me, but I like to work in 50-minute blocks now. So, there's again, so much research that tells us if you go more than an hour on something, you're just not as sharp. You lose focus, you lose energy, and we need regular breaks. So what I do is when I sit down to work on something, I set a 50-minute timer. And after 50 minutes, I'm going to get up, number one, and move and stretch my body. If you, for some reason, can't take a walk around your house or your office or wherever you are, even just stand up and bounce in place would be helpful. Just something so you're standing up and you're getting the blood flowing again. And then the other thing is to close your eyes for a little bit. So a lot of times mental fatigue is actually visual fatigue. Especially if you're staring at a screen all day, it can really kind of wear you out to just be staring at that screen every day. So even if it's 10 seconds, just close your eyes, take 10 deep breaths, nice deep inhale from your stomach, and then a nice long exhale that's going to help regulate your nervous system, that nice long exhale, because if you're taking that deep breath, your body's like, okay, we're safe, we can calm down. Because normally if you really are in danger, for example, you're going to be breathing very fast and shallow. So that nice deep breath, that's going to help calm your nervous system. Get up, get the body moving again. Close your eyes for 10 to 20 seconds, kind of give your brain, give your eyes a break. And then if you can, walk around, even if it's just to your kitchen or wherever it is, break room, if you're in an office, and get you some water. The other thing is we are so chronically dehydrated. Talk about sleep debt. Most people, the majority of people are actually really dehydrated. And when you're a little bit dehydrated, it can increase your stress levels. It increases your stress hormones. So it's another way, actually, if you stay hydrated, it's going to be really good for your stress levels and your energy levels. So I do that every 50 minutes. Now, you don't have to take a whole 10-minute break. Even if you get up for 2 minutes, go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, come back, your eyes for a few seconds, you're going to feel so much more focused and ready to get back at it. We need those breaks. If we just keep trying to slog through the day, and keep pushing ourselves, you might think like, well, geez, Julie, I can't take 5-10 minutes every hour. Like, that's too much time. But you're actually going to be so much more productive when you sit back down, and your brain's going to be so much more clearer that you're actually going to get more done. So that has been really big for me, is working in those 50-minute blocks and then getting up and moving and closing my eyes for a bit.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I know like Pomodoro method, of doing those time blocks where you set your alarm, you set your phone to that. I know they had said initially like 20 minutes. I think 50 minutes is a great time to do 50 minutes, and then you take your 10-minute break. I know I use that technique as well. It's really, really helpful. And actually, I've told my son about it as well. He's 15 years old. So that when he's studying, I mean, you can use it as a student, when you're studying a lot of information, and take those, do 50 minutes of focused work, focused study, and then take your 10-minute break. It really helps a lot. So that's a really great technique. And I love the whole thing too about drinking water, because I know I get dehydrated really quickly. And so it's really important to, drink that water. In fact, we had another coach that was here that talked about, having a cup or a glass of water during the day. So like when you wake up in the morning, a lot of times we're dehydrated, we're really dry. And so have that glass of water the moment you wake up, so that you hydrate yourself, and then you start feeling refreshed. So again, really excellent tips. Sorry, really excellent tips that you've given. Really, really like that. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah. I think sometimes if you know the reason why that is important, that really helps too, because, like I said, common sense isn't always common practice. We know, I need to get more sleep. I need to stay hydrated. I need to move. But if you don't have any real strong motivation or something you can tie it to, it can be so easy to let that stuff go. There's a reason why so many of us are sleep deprived and dehydrated, is because we're like, I know in general theory, like why it's important. But if you're like, no, I'm really stressed and I need to reduce my stress. Or if you're like, no, I want to be at my A game. I want to be a really high performer. And if you don't feel like you are at, the top of your game, it's probably because you're neglecting these basic habits. So I think sometimes like finding out like the science behind like, oh, that's why it's important. It's not just like mom nagging me to do these things because she thinks it's good. It's like, no, there's science behind it, right? So sometimes when we know, especially for somebody like me, I'm kind of a research nerd. Like if I know the science behind it, like, oh, okay, this is why they say it's so important. This is why it's so commonly preached, is because, this is what it's going to help me with. It's going to reduce my stress levels. It's going to help me, think more clearly, be on my game, have more energy. And that's important to me because I want to, serve my clients. I want to be a better mom. I want to be more patient, like whatever it is. I think finding that why sometimes can be really a key piece.
Yeah, I think that is so important, is knowing what your why is. And then also having, I think, a structure or routine in place is so important too, because I work with so many different clients. A lot of times they say, well, I just don't have the motivation. And I always say, well, the motivation actually comes when you take the action. Absolutely. So like you have to have the action first, and then you like going out and working out, for example, or going for a walk, going for a hike, or getting enough sleep, for example. When you take that action, you actually start to feel more motivated because you're reducing that level of stress as well. And a lot of times people think differently. Like they think, oh, well, when I feel motivated, then I'll go out for a walk, or when I feel motivated, I'll really focus in on that project that I've been thinking about for days, right? So
Yeah.
I think that is really true, is having your reason why is so important. And then also taking action. Taking
Hmm.
action is so important too.
For
So
sure.
thank you for that. Really
Yeah,
appreciate that.
absolutely.
Any other tips that you want to give us, give our viewers?
Yeah, I would say the one last thing is to really make sure, like, sometimes we can be super productive and getting a
Mm,
lot done during the day, but kind of like we were talking about having the motivation, having the why, making sure that you're taking time every once in a while with fresh eyes, and beginning of the year is perfect time to do it. Sit down and really kind of evaluate what you're doing and making sure that you're focused on the right things. I think it's so easy, especially if you have the same kind of work day in and day out, to really kind of lose sight of the big picture, lose sight of those
mm,
goals, and just kind of go through the motions without taking a moment to really evaluate like what you're doing in the day to day, and really kind of look and see like, okay, what can I get off my plate? Especially if you're a super busy person and you're a little overwhelmed and you're like, why I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to take breaks every 15 minutes. I got too much to do. A lot of times, actually, you can make some more room in your day if you
mm,
plan a little bit more strategically. One of the best things I ever did was start really kind of planning my week on Sundays. I look and I don't just put my appointments down, but I really think about my big goals for the week,
mm-hmm.
what projects I'm going to move forward, and just make sure, like you said, take that I'm taking action every day on the right things, that it's not just busy work, that it's things that are actually going to move my goals forward. Um, and just make sure that you're spending some time every day on really high value activities that are going to contribute towards your goals, instead of wasting time on things that you could outsource or delegate or just plain stop doing because they're not really going to get you the outcome that you're after.
I love, love, love this. I love what you just said right now, because I think it's all about intentional living, right? Because
Mm.
a lot of times we can go through life and kind of like ho hum hell, right? We're just like going through life, and and by the end of the day, you're like, okay, what did I accomplish today?
Yeah.
Did I really get what I wanted to get done? And then you notice like the year goes by, and then it's the next year, and it's like still doing the same thing, right? And so I think what you're talking about is a lot about intentional living. Like, what is it? What is really important to you? What are your values? What is really important to you? And what is it that you want to accomplish? And really set that as your priority. I love that you talked about setting that priority and what your weekly goals are on Sunday. That really is helpful too, to know, so that you have a plan in place. So you're not just like, oh, okay, I'm just doing this errand, doing that errand, or doing busy work, like you're
Mhm.
saying, doing busy work, and then not feeling fulfilled,
Yeah.
by the end of the day. So
Yeah.
again, love, love, love that tip. Really excellent tip. Thank you so much for that.
Course. I think it's actually really interesting that I think people that are fairly successful, we
Uh-huh.
need goals and we need these really clear action plans, almost even more than somebody that's starting out. Because
Mm.
when you're starting out, a lot of times you're really hungry, right?
Uh-huh.
And you have so much to do to get things off the ground. Like sometimes it can be easier to have that motivation. The really
That's
kind
true. Yeah.
funny thing is like when you're really successful and you're like you have a pretty good life, like things are going along, and you can just kind of maintain. I think that's when you, like you said, things can become kind of ho hum, because it's like you're just going through the motions, you're
Mm.
maintaining, but you lost that meaningful pursuit, because you don't have to you don't have to push to that next level per se, but it takes so much of the joy out of the day to day. So I
Mhm.
really actually think people that are really pretty successful are the ones that need those goals, and those really clear goals that are motivating to them almost more than anybody else, because otherwise that's when you really kind of check out and life kind of loses some of its joy, and it just becomes kind of ho hum, like you said.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I didn't really think about it that way, but I think you're absolutely right about, I think the most successful people need that, like you're saying, to have goals in life and to keep that sense of fulfillment going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Definitely. So at this part of our episode, we actually focus on favorites. I always like to hear from our guests what their favorites are. So what is your favorite food?
Favorite food? Oh gosh,
Yeah,
I'm gonna say Mexican food.
Mexican.
You
Oh,
eat
I
in a
love
good
Mexican
Mexican restaurant. I lose all self-control in front of a thing of chips and salsa. Definitely
I'm
Mexican
here
food.
there. I can hear you on that one. Love Mexican food as
Yeah.
well. What is your favorite fitness?
Oh, fitness. So I walk a lot. I don't think you necessarily have to have tons of things, but I like to walk, and I also like to do Les Mills as an online. You can put it on your TV, and they have lots of different classes because I like to kind of mix it up. It's good for your fitness, but also so you don't get bored with it. So especially if you're like, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to walk again, or I don't want to whatever. It can really kind of mix things up, and it's like a group class, but on TV. It's not live, but you can kind of work along with a group. And so that's probably my favorite way to get variety into my workouts.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. Now, what about your favorite find? Your favorite find?
Well, right now, something I bought right before Christmas, I bought it for myself for Christmas. It was actually an infrared sauna bag. It almost looks like a sleeping bag. So instead of like going to the sauna at a gym or something, or buying a huge sauna, I got this bag, and you zip yourself into it, and it's got infrared heat in it. It's another thing that I, kind of geeked out on the science of like, how do you really kind of optimize your health? And there's a lot of research behind, you've probably heard of like cold plunges and cold showers.
Yes.
Sort of the opposite is like extreme heat, extreme cold. Our body actually does well when it's exposed to higher temperatures and lower temperatures, and it kind of can help that nervous system regulation. So a couple times a week, did it this morning, zipped myself in the bag. You sweat out a lot of toxins, and it's really just really good for your health.
So, wow, so I haven't heard about the bag. So where do you purchase that? I mean, and you have to zip it up all the way through to
like your head's out of it, but it's
I was like, oh my god,
yeah. So
I'd be like, I can't breathe.
That's the other thing. Like I've done saunas before, and I feel like I can't breathe. I get really kind of stuffy.
Yeah.
Because it's not hot air.
Okay, so it's like a sleeping bag, and you zip it up, and
up to here. Okay. Higher Dose is the brand that I bought. A friend of mine had one and recommended it, but that's the name brand is Higher Dose.
Oh, okay. And then how long are you in that? I mean, how long? Do you
about 50 minutes. Yeah,
50 minutes.
You can do it for less, but yeah, almost an hour. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It takes a while. Like I said, I've heard of the ice baths and the cool shower.
Yeah, that's like 3 minutes. Yeah.
This is 50 minutes. I know. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, 30 to 50 is a good idea. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then you really feel. How do you feel afterwards? I mean, I haven't heard of this before.
Yeah, really a little hot. You feel like you've had a workout afterwards for sure. But it over time, I think it's really helps with your skin. It helps like like a detox because you're sweating out. Like going to steam lodges and saunas and things like that. Same concept, but just in sleeping bag style.
See, I never, like I said, I didn't hear about that before. So that's really interesting. Yeah. Sounds like something to do, right? Yeah, alleviate your stress, and then also keep you calm. And I'm sure, like you said, your skin and everything is really nice too afterwards.
Yeah, and since you're stuck there for a while, I listen to personal development stuff. I listen to podcasts and classes and things like that while I'm zipped into it. So it kind of two birds, one stone.
Yeah, I like that. That's great. Great idea. Really great idea. So what's your favorite film?
Now this is hard because I love movies. But I have to go for a classic, The Princess Bride.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's got it all. It's got romance, adventure, sword fights, you name it. Like it's got it all. It's a good classic film. It's got to be like, I don't know, late 80s, early 90s movie, but one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I know it's funny I love watching movies. We watched Ferris Bueller's Days Off.
A classic.
Off. Yeah. Kind of funny. It's like to watch these, old movies. Yeah. So it really reduces the stress too.
It does. I think it's good.
Stress.
Especially something that makes you laugh. Like laugh laughing is good for you. It helps relieve stress. So yeah, I think put on a good comedy every once in a while, and it really can be a
Yeah,
good.
I always love watching comedies. I mean, we
Yeah.
always watch comedies. It's like, I don't want any drama right now. It's like,
Got enough of
enjoy
that.
the life.
Yeah.
Just go for the comedies. I like the
Yeah.
laughter. I like
Yeah.
to have fun. That's
Oh.
great. Any other tips, comments before we close?
I think those are kind of my big ones. I would just say, like, really take some time to think about, like, if you're pivoting, what do you need to do to support yourself and support your daily habits so that you can show up at your best? And sometimes it's handling the basics, especially if somebody's pivoting into to growing a business. Like I said, that was my first big pivot. You have to take care of your mindset and your body as much as anything. And I think that can be really, really hard to remember when you're so focused on growing something new. I actually just saw this really great quote this week that said, build a dream and the dream will build you. And it's so true. I always say that entrepreneurship is the biggest personal development journey I ever could have gone on. I did not know anything about mindset work or personal development before I started a business. And I really had to learn it when I, started growing a business, because when you're building something new, when you're pivoting, you got to be strong in your mindset as much as anything, as much as your skill and whatever it is you're growing is important. Having that mindset, that's the thing that's going to get you through the tough
Yeah,
times.
definitely.
Yeah, so really, like, working on that mindset every day, working on your personal development, developing the habits that you need to keep yourself, your body healthy and your mind healthy. I think keeping those in mind, no matter what you're pivoting towards, no matter what you're working on, those have got to be the foundational things that, it's common sense stuff, but we got to make them common practice and just really focus on why that matters. Even if you have to get into the science or whatever it is for you that makes that difference, it's so important.
I think that's great. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think self-development is so important, and putting those practices in place. So thank you so much, Julie, for being on our show. Really appreciate it. We'll have all your social media channels after the show as well. This is all being recorded as well. And so join us again on Pivot Now. We're here every Tuesday, 10 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
Change and shift your energy. Pivot